All right, we are going live and it looks like folks are coming into the room, so we're going to give it a few seconds. We just opened our virtual door and we're going to let everybody get through the door before we get going. Good morning, everybody. Just give us a few seconds to let everybody in and we'll get going. All right. Looks like, folks, it's slowing down a little bit. So let's go ahead and get started. We're just going to do some introductions and stuff first. So good morning, everybody. My name is Michelle Bird. I'm the Public Affairs Director here at Lamar County, and I'm going to be your Zoom host for this morning. Just really quickly before I go off to my commissioners to give some opening remarks, I want to let you know that we're hoping for your engagement in your conversation this morning. So there's a couple different ways you can talk with us this morning and engage. First, you'll notice there's a Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. That's kind of like the chat box. So go ahead, if you have questions at any point, please put those in the Q&A box. I'll be monitoring that. The rest of the panelists will be monitoring that so we can get your questions answered. That's really the reason we're here this morning, is to give you an update and see what you guys need answers on or help with. So please feel free to use the Q&A box to let us know what's on your mind this morning. Second, if you want to just chat with us, kind of like we used to do in the old days before COVID, you can raise your hand. And what I'll do is I'll give you the opportunity, I'll get you unmuted, and you can actually speak with us this morning. So that's always an option too. If you're more comfortable doing that than putting a question in the Q&A box, please feel free to raise your hand. And I will be monitoring both of those things this morning so our panelists can focus on giving you guys some good information as we're moving forward with recovery. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my commissioners to give some opening remarks. Commissioner Kafalis is our chair of the Board of County Commissioners this year, so I'm going to go to him first.
Thank you, Michelle. Thanks everyone for being here. Thanks to Lori Hodges and her team. And one of the things I wanted to say is that the presence of all three commissioners here, I think is a demonstration of how important this is to us, that you folks feel like you're being heard, that you really are being heard. We continually learn from these presentations about the issues, affecting homeowners and public lands, in relation to the Cameron Peak fire. So we're glad that we are able to do these town hall meetings. It is part of our ongoing effort to stay connected with folks and to be responsive to folks in terms of what their needs are, regarding this natural disaster, and what we're doing to support you, and also what we're doing to prevent future disasters. Certainly, you'll hear a lot about what spring runoff and information about weather and certainly behavioral health issues, which are so important, because I imagine that folks have been impacted traumatically from all of this. So just again to say that we are grateful to be here. This is important to us, and we want to support you in any ways that the county can do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Kafalis. Commissioner Kafalis is our commissioner from District 1, so we'll move on to our commissioner from District 2. Commissioner Stevens, go ahead.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. I'm Kristen Stevens, and happy to be here this morning to help answer your questions, although I think largely the emergency management folks will be answering most of the questions today. Jody and I don't know if John was able to attend, but we attended the Wildfire Summit that was put on last week by Congressman Neguse, which gave really good information about wildfire suppression and also resiliency after wildfires occur. I know Lori Hodges was one of the presenters there, and she always does such a great job and is so well respected around the state and the country for the work that she does. So we're really happy to follow her lead and see what resources she needs from us. I also attended an infrastructure meeting yesterday where, Senator Bennett was talking about our forests and our watersheds as being part of our infrastructure. So in many other communities, their infrastructure is built, but in our community, our infrastructure can be also our natural environment. And so, as we look at maybe getting infrastructure dollars into our community, how can those be used in our forests as well? So that's an ongoing conversation, but we'll certainly be promoting those kind of efforts in our forest service and our public lands. So thank you all for being here, and yeah, look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Stevens. And now I want to go to our commissioner from District 3, which is the lower part of Larimer County, Commissioner Jody Shattuck McNally.
Thank you so much, Michelle, and thank you to everyone being here today. All these people on the screen in front of you are the experts here, and I'm here to support them and to be here to answer your questions. And Commissioner Kafalis and Commissioner Stevens pretty much said what I would say. I did enjoy the Wildfire Summit. I thought it was well done, and I learned some new things. I also learned some things from Mr. Derek about hydrophobic soil, which is what I've been using all week. I appreciate his presentation last week. We're here because we care, and we want to show you that we're here to answer your questions and show our support and do what, and then we're going to be advocating, like in the Wildfire Summit and Commissioner Stevens in the infrastructure meetings, and anytime we can advocate for our constituents in our county, we'll be fighting hard for federal support, state support, and just here to say that we're going to, it's not going to be a short process. This is going to be a long process, and we're going to be here every step of the way and supporting our residents and helping us in our county recover from this unprecedented time. So thank you everyone for being here today. Thank you, Lori Hodges, for gathering this great group of people and being phenomenal. It was a proud moment in the Wildfire Summit to watch you present, and very proud. I think I'll say this, we all say this, we have the best emergency manager in the country, in the state, the country, and we're just really proud of her. So thank you so much for being here today, and I'm looking forward to hearing from the questions and hearing from the residents. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Shattuck McNally. Really quickly, before we introduce all of our panelists, I want to acknowledge our elected assessor, Bob Overbeck, is here as well. He does have a part in the agenda later, but Bob, if you wanted to say anything before we kind of get into the agenda, I would like to welcome you to do so now.
Thank you. Just want to say good morning. Bob Overbeck, your Larimer County Assessor, and I'm here to support and answer any questions as everyone here considers to rebuild from where they're at right now. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Assessor. So you guys we want you to know whose faces you're looking at. So we're just going to really quickly go around to the rest of our panelists, have them introduce themselves, and let you know kind of why they're here today and what their role in fire recovery is. We're going to start with Lori Hodges, our acclaimed Emergency Management Director. So Lori, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. I'm Lori Hodges. I'm the Director of Emergency Management for Larimer County. And we have two of our OEM staff on the line as well, Shale Sabo and Stephen Decatur. So I'll pass it off to them.
Shale, go ahead.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Shale Sabo. I work for the Larimer County Office of Emergency Management. I lead the COVID side of recovery as the recovery manager, but on the wildfire side, I am leading the community planning and capacity building aspect of wildfire recovery. So how we can bring neighbors together to get the farthest impact, because we are stronger when we work together. And so we want to figure out how we can support our communities at the most grassroots level.
Hello, everybody. My name is Stephen Decatur. I also work for the Larimer County Office of Emergency Management. I'm mainly working with fire line suppression repair, and then also focusing on emergency watershed protection projects as we head into the spring to prevent any flood after fire damages that we're going to likely be worried about as we head into the spring and summer.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Shale. Let's go on to Carrie.
Hi, I'm Carrie Olenek. I'm the Senior Director with Volunteers of America, but I'm on this call today because I'm the co-chair for the Larimer Long-Term Recovery Group. That's a coalition of, I think we're now around 20 nonprofits, organizations, service clubs, all sorts of folks who are all here wanting to help you with all sorts of aspects of your recovery process. So that covers everything from how do we get the debris off your land to how do we help you rebuild your home when you're ready for that. We do have a very generous community that raised over $1 million to build a long-term recovery fund. So that is something that's available to you. We have case managers ready to help you through that process to how to apply and then make sure that those funds get used on your recovery. And we also have around 2,000 volunteers already who have signed up and said, hey, as soon as you need us, we're ready to help. So we're here to serve you.
Thank you, Carrie. Okay, next on my screen is Derek. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, everybody. Derek Garter from Colorado Spirits, the program manager. We are the FEMA-funded program that has been responding to COVID, providing emotional support as well as educational presentations around common reactions to natural disasters usually, but it's we're taking it into account now as responding to a pandemic. So although our primary focus has been COVID, we pretty much know that everybody throughout Larimer County is going to be affected one way or another. And then it's doubly impacted when we're talking with folks who've been affected by either of the wildfires. So we're the program that's available virtually for online sessions as well as over the telephone. And here soon after our teams are vaccinated and feeling that we can get out there in the community, we're going to be opening back up for in-person outreach. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Derek. Moving along to Greg.
Yeah, hi, this is Greg Hansen. I'm with the National Weather Service office in Boulder. And we have forecast and warning responsibility for Larimer County and other counties around the area. And I'll be talking today about the flood threats we have after wildfires. And my screen is frozen up again, but as long as you can hear me, we're in good shape.
You seem to be working great for at least me, Greg. So keep on keeping on. Karen, you're next.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Karen Crumbaker. I'm with CSU Larimer County Extension. And the role that I've played over the past number of months is to try and connect people with resources, particularly involving their landscape, and trying to get them to the best resources available, some out of the university, some out of other universities and other partners around the county that can help people recover with their landscape. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. And last but certainly not least, Eric, go ahead.
It's hard to follow this group, but I'm Eric Freed. I'm the county building official. So our role is in building permitting and building inspections as people rebuild after the fire. And, you know, we're here to help you with that. Our team also worked hand in hand with the assessor's office, code compliance and others in doing all the damage assessment after the fire, looking at all the structures that were damaged by the fire and recording it for so we can all move ahead.
Thank you, Eric. And really quickly, before I hand it off to Lori to kind of run the meat of the meeting and the reason you guys are here, just want to remind you again, you can use the Q&A box to ask questions. You can raise your hand. I do see we have someone who's called in on their phone. So they're not necessarily using the Zoom app on their phone. They've actually called in. If whomever that listener is, if they would like to speak with us, all you need to do is press *9. And that'll indicate to us that you're wanting to talk, and we'll get to you. So with that, I think we're ready to turn it over to Lori.
All right. Morning, everybody. Again, thanks for joining us today. I think at the last town hall, a lot of folks said that it gave them some information they just didn't know yet. So we're really trying to get as much information out. So I appreciate you guys attending. We do have some updates from the last time that we had a town hall because things are moving pretty quickly. So we'll talk about some of that today as well. So kind of the plan is we do want to leave a bunch of time for questions. And last time we had a lot of great questions. We did have enough time for everybody to get their questions answered. And that's kind of our goal today as well. So so we don't have like big speeches for you guys. Really, we just have some updates and some information and some resources. And then really at any time, like Michelle said, you guys can ask a question. So I wanted to start with the National Weather Service. We get a lot of questions about kind of what's going to happen this spring and summer. What's the flood risk? What happens during wildfire? How do I get alerts and warnings? And so Greg is here to kind of talk through all of that. And then I was going to just show you guys the newsletter really quick and just kind of walk through a few pieces of some of the recovery efforts that we're going to be doing. And we're going to pass it off to Derek to talk about some behavioral health resources that are in the county. And then the long-term recovery group, Carrie, is going to talk about some of the efforts that they are working on currently in partnership with the county so that we can ensure you guys know. I hear from a lot of folks that like I heard from one gentleman when I spoke to him on the phone that he had just used his entire savings account to try to clean up his land. And he didn't know that we have some stuff that might be able to help with that. And so I want to make sure you guys know that as well, that there are some resources out there. It just might not be like a federal resource or, you know, a state grant. It could just be, you know, we have some people in our area who really want to help. And so we'll work through that. And then Karen's here with the extension, and we get a lot of questions about, you know, restoration of the land, or what do I do with my land now that it's been burned? And really the extension has a bunch of resources for folks in that realm, as well as the recovery realm. And then the building department and the assessor's office, you know, they have a few updates for you guys regarding, you know, permitting or whatever else. And so they'll have a chance to really speak. And then we'll just make sure you have kind of a broad look at what this recovery is looking like, what we're working on. And then as we go through, you know, don't wait until the very end to ask your question. Raise your hand in the Zoom, which the raise hand button is at the very bottom. And if you do that, we'll just kind of answer the questions throughout this this event. So with no more, nothing more for me, I'm going to pass this over to Greg. Greg, do you have anything you're going to be sharing on your screen? If not, I'll put up the newsletter. Oh, you do. Okay, great.
Yeah, hopefully you're seeing that. Hello, everybody, and thanks for having me on again, Lori. Yeah, so I just wanted to talk through really quickly about what happens after a wildfire, the flood threat that we're going to be fighting for the next several years now, and hopefully kind of help you with your expectations of warnings and some things you can do to help protect yourself. So all right, so overall, the Weather Service, we're the warning authority for warning for flash floods and debris flows, that sort of thing. So we're monitoring the weather 24 hours a day, and any warnings on that would come out of our office. We work very closely with Lori and other emergency management agencies to make that happen too. We're not operating in a vacuum. I wanted a couple of definitions here. A flash flood is a sudden rise in water that you need to take immediate action to save life and property. So, you know, think of the slower moving rivers out on the plains. You know, you can get out of their way pretty easily. A flash flood is the wall of water. It happens on the same time scale as the rainfall. You know, so we've got a thunderstorm putting down heavy rain in 15 or 30 minutes, and that's about how fast the flash flooding comes along too. So that's the kind of thing, you know, get out of the way right away, climb to safety. And so that's what we'll be watching for in the burn scars for that. Debris flows are where the heavy rainfall rates pick up all the stuff that's left behind after a wildfire and moves that downstream. So with the wildfires, we've lost, you know, everything, all the vegetation that's holding all that ground in place. And so when we get some heavy rainfall rates, that can start to move the soil, the rocks, the half-burned tree trunks, that sort of thing, and can be quite devastating too. So both those things we'll warn for with flash floods when we see the rainfall rates. So this graphic, you've heard the term hydrophobic a couple of times already. This graphic there on the right side shows, you know, the before, during, and after the fire. Before, you've got this nice tree canopy. Rainfalls, a lot of that rainfall is actually intercepted by the trees. When it hits the ground, it absorbs into that forest litter, the duff on the floor. It's real soft. You know, it's the difference between spilling some water on your carpet versus spilling water on your tile floor or something. You know, if it's carpet, it soaks in, doesn't go anywhere. It runs all over the place when you spill the water on your vinyl flooring. So the forest canopy in a healthy forest, you know, helps slow down the runoff from that rainfall, slows down the flash flood threat, makes it less of a threat when we have a healthy forest. So after a fire, you know, we've burned up all that vegetation. We've lost that forest canopy, and so any rain falling just goes right through those dead trees and hits the ground. You know, there's a layer of ash and kind of charred soil on top. But then there's a layer of what we call hydrophobic soil. So as the fire burns through, if it burns hot enough or long enough, it burns up all that organic matter, you know, the sap that gets on your hands from your Christmas tree. And once that cools back down, those organics form a water repellent layer. So it's turning that soft, absorbent forest floor duff into, you almost think of it like a crust. And so the water hits that and it just runs right off. And so that's what we're looking for we really have to be aware of where the forest fire burned the hottest and the longest, so we can really key in on those areas. And that greatly reduces the thresholds that we use to warn for flash floods. And we're really looking at the intensity of the rainfall to issue those warnings. All right. So after the fire, before the floods, we're doing what we're doing now. We work with our partners. We work with Larimer County and Lori, and trying to, just get the word out to the communities, the people at risk of what the threat actually is. The whole process starts right after the fire with the U.S. Forest Service and other agencies send in a bear team to assess the intensity of the fire, what's burned the worst. And at the same time, the U.S. Geological Survey has a team that really are the experts in debris flow, and they assess things like, what basins are at most risk to debris flows, how much rain is it going to take, what's the probability of getting a debris flow if we get a 1/4 inch versus 35/100ths of an inch, that sort of thing. And so all that data, there's a lot of agencies working on this, and we use that as our input into determining those flash flood risks. And so I've got some examples down there under the flash flood thresholds. We don't have them worked out quite yet for the Cameron Peak fire, but they're very small. Normally we're looking for maybe well over an inch of rain in an hour, but for these burn scars, as little as a 1/4 to 35/100ths of an inch in just 15 minutes can be enough to cause some flash flooding, again, because of that hydrophobic soil. It's afraid of water, right? It pushes the water on downstream. So we've got a very fast response time. During the flood, we're going to be monitoring radar on our rain gauges. When we hit those thresholds, we will issue flash flood warnings. Bear in mind, this is a little bit of an estimate at the start. We've got to get some experience under our belt. So there may be some false alarms. We'd rather err on the false alarm side and overwarn early on. So we'll be kind of tweaking those numbers as we go. If we find out it takes a little bit more, a little bit less rain, we'll adjust our thresholds accordingly. But those flash flood warnings are what we'll be issuing to do that. Our goal is to get lead time, to let people know 15 minutes, 30 minutes ahead of time, excuse me, which is certainly possible as storms are moving into the area. But sometimes, we know in the mountains, storms form right over the mountains and they stay locked on the terrain and they don't really move. And in those cases, the rainfall and the runoff happens on that same time scale. It could be 15 minutes or half an hour. So as we're seeing the rainfall, it's also probably causing flooding. So there may be times where you don't get an advanced warning, or the warning comes out right when the flooding is occurring. So people living and working and playing in those flood zones, you need to be aware of your surroundings and know what's going on. So what you can do is be informed, know the forecast. Go to our website, weather.gov/BOU, and we're going to get a special burn scar page up. But there's a thing on that front page called the Hazardous Weather Outlook. You can read that on a daily basis, and that gives you an idea of what we're expecting for the day. Just to know, is today a heavy rain day? What time are the storms going to form? If I'm going to be in a flood risk area, I don't want to be there in the afternoon, perhaps. Know where your water's coming from. If you are living or playing somewhere, know what is upstream. Know if you see a thunderstorm upstream, it may not necessarily be raining on you, but if it's raining upstream and you know where that water is coming from, that can be a clue for you. Also watch the river, if early on, especially with the snow melt and the first couple of rainfalls, the water in the stream is going to be pretty ashy. It's going to be pretty dark and black, but watch those streams. If you see water rising quickly and some debris and things in there, that's going to be a good environmental cue for you too. So, just be aware of your surroundings when you're out there. We strive to get those warnings out in advance, but you may not get one. Now, how do you get those warnings? A couple of ways I'm going to recommend for you, and there are tons of, if you've got cell phone coverage up there, there are tons of very good apps. Working for the federal government, I can't recommend any, I'm sorry. But the two that I'm going to suggest is one, the NOAA Weather Radio. That's the kind of the basic common denominator. It's always going to work. When we issue a warning, we've got a specific radio band, radio frequencies we send that out on. So you do need a special radio. If you search NOAA Weather Radio on your favorite shopping app or website, you'll get all kinds of responses for that. But warnings will be sent immediately on that weather radio. It's a good way to get the warnings. Get one with a tone alert feature so that when we do issue a warning, a little siren will go off so you can have the radio in standby. It'll wake you up in the middle of the night and give you the warning that way. Make sure it has the same feature, SAME, specific area message encoding. That way you can set it up just to receive warnings for Larimer County. So when we're warning for tornadoes in Weld County, you won't get alerted for those. So you need tone alert, and you need same specific area message encoding, and also get one with a battery backup. So when the power goes out, the radio will still work. Really good basic way, inexpensive to get warnings. Another thing for your cell phone, if you're in an area with good cell phone coverage, get the Fema app. There's some other things on there too, but it's a good way for the general public to receive warnings for that we send out. It pushes out and then it shows up on your cell phone. And again, there's tons of other kinds of weather apps too that will push notifications that way. The image I have there on the right is the area coverage for weather radio that serves Fort Collins and Larimer County. So it gets kind of spotty when we get into the foothills, but if you can get coverage, it's a good way to go. And again, I talked about this environmental cues. And then the last thing is just have a plan, right? You don't want to be figuring out in the middle of a disaster what it is you need to be doing. So if you live in an area, if you're traveling into an area, know what you're going to do if a flood wave comes down. Where's your safe spot to either climb to safety or to evacuate if you've got enough time to do that. So know what you're going to do before the warning comes. That's critical for reacting. And that's all for me. I'm happy to take any questions now, or I'll hang around through the rest of the thing too.
I am not seeing any questions right now, Greg. I'm going to remind, there's a couple folks called in. I just want to remind them to raise their hand. They just need to press *9, but I'm not seeing any other questions right now. So if you'll do us a favor and kind of keep your eye on that Q&A box to answer any questions that pop up there, that'd be great.
Okay, we'll do.
Thank you.
Michelle,
Yeah.
People have access to the chat.
Correct. There's folks that are participating today. We can send stuff out to you via the chat box. So you should see Lori had sent something out talking about Noco Alerts. So keep your eye. Oh, we do have a hand raised. So let's go.
Wait.
Lori. Oh yeah, Lori, go ahead.
Okay, so I did put the Noco Alerts in the chat. That is a great way to get signed up for county alerts, and also the National Weather Service is tied into that. So you'll be able to get the national weather alerts from that as well. So you can sign up for your home address, your work address, or if your children have like school that they go to somewhere, you can put in multiple addresses. You can also put in multiple different phones. But again, like Greg said, a lot of the areas that were impacted by fire have no cell service, and therefore that weather radio is a really good option. And the newsletter I'm going to show you a little bit later has that information he was talking about, that same information and the parameters that you want for a weather radio. So you guys can all get that. And then it's also available on our website. So I just want to make sure you guys had that before we moved any further.
Thank you, Lori. Let's go to our question. I don't know the name of the person, but you have a 970 number. Now you just need to, I've allowed you to talk. You need to hit *6, and that should unmute yourself. 970 number ends in 922. You just have to hit *6. There you go. I think you're there. Can you hear me?
I'm sorry. I just heard the *9 and I'm listening in. Is this being recorded so I can watch the first part because I came in late?
Yes, it is being recorded, and we'll get that out to you, to everyone who signed up. Absolutely.
Thank you. No question.
You're welcome. Thanks so much. All right, Lori, go ahead.
Okay, we do have a question from Jim Witten. Does National Weather Service have specific location risk assessments, such as for the confluence of the Redstone and Buckhorn Creeks? I will say the county has done a risk assessment. We used this winter while everything was frozen to do a risk assessment of the entire fire area as well as downstream. That risk assessment is completed now. They're just writing up the report. So this next newsletter that we're going to be putting out is going to have some of that information in it about what that risk assessment told us. We looked at neighborhoods that are most at risk. We looked at roads that are most at risk. We looked at where those debris flows are going to go. The one piece that we're still missing is we're working with the state of Colorado and a few other providers on the hydrology that we want just to match up with all of this data, just to make sure that everything that we have, that the hydrology agrees on it. That'll give us those high risk areas that we really need to do something about this spring and this summer. I don't know if Greg had anything else he wanted to ask there.
Yeah, I talked a little bit in there. Yeah, that's something that we'll want to be working on with you. We're eager to get that. We've got some very simple modeling that doesn't take really the flowing water into account. So we've got a little bit of an idea, but yeah, it's your local knowledge that really helps us with figuring out what's really at risk and where we can focus our efforts, make sure we don't miss a spot.
Okay, so I think I'm going to pass it off to Derek to talk about some behavioral health resources we have in the county.
I'm going to share screen. And while I'm kind of getting this set up, I just want to send a quick shout out and acknowledgement to Eric. I love the shirt for Glen Haven Mountain Strong. That was great support after the floods. So again, sorry, I get nervous in front of a lot of people, so forgive me for this.
And Derek, as
yep.
you're speaking, will you speak up too? Because you're also kind of a light speaker.
Yep, sorry. Thank you. I appreciate the reminder, Lori. So again, yeah, shout out for Glen Haven Mountain Strong. Great support after the floods when we worked with them. And then Greg, thank you again for the hydrophobic term. That is one that I know that we try to get out there and let folks know about when we're doing outreach and just talking with communities. And as a survivor myself from the Northern Colorado tornado back in 2008, as well as responding to the High Park and Woodland Heights fires and then the 2013 floods, I would completely echo the NOAA alerts, the weather radio. We had one after the tornado, and then agencies in Weld County and Larimer County have those in our buildings. And then the county alerts have been really helpful as well. So these are items that we put together when we're doing our presentations, such as I'm about to show you. Just getting the word out there and trying to do the outreach and getting folks connected to the different supports that we have at the city levels as well as the county levels. And here we go, maybe. So Colorado Spirits, this is a state moniker right now for our crisis counseling programs. Throughout the county currently, we have about 17 different programs in different counties responding in their county to help with the emotional supports, the educational programming, as well as just being available for anybody if they just need a chat or just need a distraction. So one of the resources we're doing right now is an escape from Coveted Mountain. It's a virtual platform set up for folks just to kind of take a break and focus on something else beside for COVID or the wildfires that are happening right now. So again, the basic brief services that we offer is the individual supports, whether it be virtual, over the phone. We're hoping to get back in person here in the next couple of months. And then just helping spread the word about community supports that are out there is one of the other big areas that we really try to focus on. So this is a little graphic that I set up to kind of explain the difference between what I usually do as my day job is traditional outpatient therapy versus our intense services that we sometimes have in the community. So we do have a crisis line here in Larimer County and throughout Northern Colorado, where residents can call in and literally speak to a live therapist 24/7 via phone call, as well as Zoom. And then we also have our co-responders that respond with law enforcement and or EMS if there's a situation that needs to be assessed for somebody in the community. And then again, traditional outpatient, that's where you meet with clients probably 1 to 2 times a week in the beginning, and then it scales back to every other week. And the eventual goal is once a month. And then the service that we provide is, it's more of that brief support. It's that emotional bridge of support as folks are responding to and or going through the pandemic and or the wildfires. And for our services, usually it's 1 or 2 times for a visit, and then we can meet with folks up to 5, even 6 times, kind of further assessing, seeing how they're doing, and if they would like ongoing services, then that's when we refer them back to traditional services. I understand that I'm contracted and I work with Summit Stone, which is great. But the other piece of it is that we can also refer to other community members to help support residents if Summit Stone is not exactly correct for them, and or if they just would like a different type of service. The nice thing about our program is we are able to make those referrals to our community partners. And then here's the textbook definition of a disaster. I think the biggest part about it is we know here in Larimer County, we've been affected by a flood, by a tornado. The Berthoud area was affected by a tornado, the fires, and then the tornado that hit Weld and Larimer County back in 2008. So a disaster overwhelms the collective needs in the local areas. And so it goes through either the city or the town, the county responds, then the region responds. And then at that point in time, if the state is overwhelmed, that's when we ask for the federal partners to come in for those nationally declared disasters. And so when that happens, that's when a program like ours is able to come in and support. And then so the rest of these are pieces that we put together for our presentations when we're talking to either school-age young folks, family members, community members, first responders, folks either at the city or regional level, anybody who'd like just some of that information and responses. So these are the ones, the kind of effects and concerns that we know if it hits these types of levels, this is probably where we want to see getting some support for folks. It's sleeping and eating. It's how the interactions going with your friends and family, those you're connected to. So the 5 that I usually try to check in on with people when I ask them, how's your 5? We talk about how's your love life, how's your work, how's your sleep, how's your eating, and then how's your play. And by play, I mean, are you able to enjoy those things that are not necessarily work and or family related? It's just kind of enjoying yourself and enjoying the moments, being able to have fun. The other part that we definitely want to always talk about and make sure that folks are aware of is we know that after major life-changing events, disasters, pandemics, we know that alcohol use, tobacco use, substance use definitely goes up. So those are just some other areas of concern that we're always keeping an eye on and just checking in with folks. So just really quickly, this is a graphic that I like to use going back to the tornado, is explaining and validating and then normalizing what folks are going through with this pandemic, with the fires. So we usually start, there's some type of warning. The impact is the disaster or the pandemic itself. So with the fires, I think this is the most relatable to COVID, that when the fires come through, there's not just one day where that event happens, it's actually over time. And so the impact happens. And then once we have a containment at the end of the event, that's when we see kind of the heroic phase and the honeymoon phase coming into play. That's when you see communities rallying together, really being supportive and helping one another. And then kind of as that goes along, folks, their energy levels kind of go down, their connection to their neighbors, to their extended family, to the neighborhood partners. As that kind of phases down, we go through that disillusionment phase. And so this is kind of where we see the concerns pop up about either behavioral health, mental health. Sometimes it is physical health, somatic complaints, because the body is overwhelmed by everything that's going on. That's when you're going to see headaches, backaches, neck aches, just stomach aches happen. And they're exacerbated and triggered by these events when they're part of that disillusionment phase. I think for a tough thing for the fires, very similar to the pandemic, is the anniversary acknowledgement. And I like to call it more of an acknowledgement rather than the anniversary piece. Again, being a survivor myself, I didn't really necessarily want to acknowledge, the anniversary, the 1 year timeline of when the tornado hit affected me and my family. It was more of an acknowledgement of what have we done? What have we put back together? How are we responding and measuring that over the last year? May 22nd was really rough in 2008. And then kind of thinking back about it in 2009, what challenges did we overcome? We got back into our house about 6 months after, just building those relationships and seeing that now, acknowledging that we were affected by this as survivors. We are not going to be defined by that event. We're going to be surviving that event. It's not going to change who we are. It's just going to become a piece of us. And then so And please notice that there are times when there's going to be little dips, there's going to be little setbacks. Those are natural, they're going to happen. If nothing else, coming from somebody who's been a survivor himself, as well as responding to several disasters, it's okay for folks to have that drop back. It's okay to have those setbacks. It's part of the process. It's not fun, it's not great, but it also can show us that once we get over that event, that those triggers, moving forward, we're going to be okay. And then this is another term that we talk about and is definitely a part of what we're going through with the pandemic and the fires. Because I remember this personally, of sitting in my garage looking at everything that was destroyed and everything that we had kind of taken into the house and out of the house and so on and so forth. I remember having this moment with my wife at the time of just saying, I wish things would go back to normal. They're going to go back to a slightly version of the old normal, but what we're looking at is the new normal, because we can't take away what has happened to us, but we can build upon that, and we can demonstrate through resiliency that just naturally occurs. The new normal is what it's going to be. And there's some acknowledgement in that makes it, personally for me, feel a little better of, okay, I can't take it back. It's not going to go back the way it was. This is my new normal. And that event is only a piece of me, does not define me. And then so during our presentations, we also talk about coping skills and building that resiliency. Here's some examples of these on the screen. If nothing else, I always like to encourage folks, exercise in one form or fashion can be one of the best coping skills, as well as self-regulation skills, as well as getting yourself back into that balance. Really quickly, my analogy of after folks are in a life-changing event, however long the event takes, it usually takes double that amount of time to get back to that sense of balance. And I relate it to an oil change for your car. When we get an oil change, we usually want to do it between 3,000 and 5,000 miles, depending on the car and the oil. Now, can your car function pretty well after that 3,000 or 5,000 mark? Yeah, it can keep going, and you keep pushing it out. It'll keep responding. It'll keep working. However, once you get that oil change, your car and your engine are going to run a lot better. And I think about that in comparison for exercise. When we are stressed, when we're overwhelmed, when we're feeling exhausted, we have those chemicals released into not only our brain, but also our body, which give us those somatic complaints. Exercise and eating well, sleeping well, help flush out those chemicals from our body and help us return to that balance. And then just some ideas that we always like to suggest to folks. I really think humor is a great resource to use, whether that be telling jokes and having fun with your family, whether it be watching, have a lot of former clients that love to watch cat videos, and they just would talk about this and laugh for hours and just really enjoy that. And it's that break. It's getting away from those stressors, those times of being overwhelmed. Here is our number right now. Currently, we are in partnership with Connections in the Health District. So this support line number, again, that you can reach a member of our team Saturday through Sunday, 8 to 8, and or the Connection staff are available 24/7. And then again, the crisis line that we have through Summit Stone Health Partners that ends in 4200. So that's 970-494-4200. This is where you can access a live clinician 24/7, 365. And then this is me, and I will turn it back, and I will drop this information into the chat. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Derek. All right, I'm not seeing any questions for you right now in our Q&A section. I'm not seeing any hands raised either, but I do have someone new called in. So for our new person who's called in, if you have questions at all during presentations today, you can hit *9 to raise your hand, and then we'll be able to talk to you about your questions. I just wanted to acknowledge Sue does have a question in the question and answer section, but it's probably more relevant for a little bit later on in the presentation. So Sue, I do see your question, and we will get there in a little bit, so hang tight. Lori, go ahead.
All right. I want to walk you guys through the newsletter that I talked about, because some of our other speakers, they have kind of a section in this newsletter. So we'll call on them when we get there. This is on our website now, so you guys can grab it as a PDF document and keep it for your own records. And then again, we'll be updating this in the next week or so with some updates from some of our efforts. So a couple of things I wanted to show you guys is we do have some partners who are having some town halls and some webinars. And a couple of these have already passed. These are in the last newsletter, of course, but in the new one, we'll have additional webinars. But the United policyholders, I did want to say, they have a new worksheet that is out, and it's also on the web, which will provide you that link with some, let me put it up really quick and see if I can share that. It has some stuff about more of the recovery efforts that are going on. I mean, the restoration efforts that are going on. So let me see if I can share that.
Lori, I can grab that link for you.
Okay. So this is the United policyholders for people, for the impacted Colorado households. They're really the experts on insurance too. So any questions you guys have or concerns you have with insurance, I did talk to a lot of individuals who were having trouble with their insurance companies, just getting answers or knowing what counted, what didn't count, or what all the different numbers are. So they do have a few different things coming up. There's a tax matters workshop coming up on March the 10th. And then there's a survivor to survivor forum. So that's an opportunity for folks to talk to others who have been through the same thing. And then there is also another tax implications Q&A that's on March 24th. We have been getting some tax questions. So I think just so you guys know that those are all coming up in March. We will put those in the new newsletter, but it's also, again, this worksheet right here is on the website, or yeah, is on our website, and Michelle will share that with you guys. Sorry,
Hey,
I'm
Lori,
going to switch.
just a heads up, the links are not working for some reason, so I'm going to try to reload them and I'll get those in there. So
Okay.
just bear with me a few seconds while you guys keep presenting. I'll get those links working and I'll get them out.
Okay. I'm going to go back to here. All right, so the CSU extension has a number of resources for you guys. So I want to see if Karen can talk a little bit about that. And I don't know if she has a presentation or not.
Yeah, Lori, hi. Sorry about that. I was just unmuting myself.
That's okay.
I just actually have one slide that I would like to show. It has some resources on there. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay, great. Okay, so real quick while I'm getting this pulled up, I never thought that I would say I love Zoom. And the main reason is because this has been such a great opportunity to get a lot of resources out to people that need help, because I'm only one person and I do my best to respond to everybody that I get questions to that are looking for help. And a lot of people are just not quite sure how and what to do to rehab their land post fire. So we just completed, and I'm guessing some of you on this call, we've been on Zoom the past week and a half. We've had 2 Zooms on reseeding. So when to reseed, how to do it properly, when not to reseed. And then we just had one on Thursday evening on planting trees, when to plant, where not to plant, the survivability of your trees that are on your property, that have been really, really helpful to folks. So I want to just direct everybody to CSU Larimer County Extension's website under Wildfire Resources, and you'll find a lot of information on landscapes, and all this information in these resources are meant for you. They describe hydrophobic soils, soil erosion, seeding, tree health. And so there's a lot of really good resources on there. I've worked really hard to put information there that would be really helpful to landowners. So please visit our website for that. Colorado State Forest Service, who spoke on Thursday evening, Mike Hughes with the Forest Service, he's a forester, and I put the Forest Service information in this link as well. They're in Fort Collins. And Mike would be really happy to visit with anybody if they've got specific questions on their tree health and reseeding. And with that, also the Seedling Tree Nursery. So some of you may not be aware that Colorado State Forest Service has a Seedling Tree Nursery here in Fort Collins. You can go onto their website and order seedling trees for your property. There's information on the correct way to seed or to plant those seedling trees, keep them healthy. And I would recommend both of the Colorado State Forest Service's resources. USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service. A big concern, as we heard earlier, is with soil erosion. And NRCS is there to help folks with soil erosion issues. And they're located in Fort Collins. Sam Adam is the conservation district conservationist. And so Sam would be available to help with questions dealing with soil erosion. Weeds. We're going to expect weeds to come in. And those of you who aren't aware of it, Larimer County has a weed district, and they are going to be very involved with folks in the burn area when they're dealing with weeds and noxious weeds that may be coming in. So do know that Larimer County has a weed district. And then if you would like to learn more about noxious weeds, Colorado Department of Ag has a noxious weed program, and it will help you identify species of weeds that may come in after the fire on your property. So they're a really good resource, and they have fact sheets, so it will explain what the weeds are and management practices. So I'd recommend that you visit Colorado Department of Ag's noxious weed program website. And then finally, here's my contact information. Again, I'm Karen Crumbaker. I'm with CSU Larimer County Extension. And feel free to reach out with me with questions that you may have. I may not have the answers for you, but I'm pretty good at finding resources and putting people in touch with those that can help. So I'm here to help. So thanks, Lori.
All right, thanks for joining us. We do get a lot of questions that I think you guys can really help to answer. So I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Hey, Lori, sorry to interrupt, but we do have a question for Karen. Karen, are those CSU meetings you talked about, or meetings, presentations, workshops, whatever you want to call them?
Yep.
Are those available to watch after the fact?
Yes, and so we did record them. And if you go on to CSU Extension's website under Wildfire Resources, hopefully they'll be posted next week. And so I would really encourage anybody who's looking at doing any kind of reseeding or replanting to watch those, to make sure that you're doing it correctly. And again, whether it needs to be done or not. So yes, so take a look at our website next week for those to be posted.
Thank you, Karen. And I'm going to grab a link. I'm grabbing it right now and put it in the chat box for folks so they can link to that. And just a heads up, I did get the links working for the newsletter, and there was something else, the workshop flyer. So those are both in the chat box as well.
Thanks, Michelle.
You bet, Karen. Thank you. And I don't see any other hands up. Hold on really quickly. I have too many boxes open at one time. I don't see any hands up. So Lori, it's all you.
All right. So also in this newsletter, we talk a little bit about suppression repairs. So Stephen is on the line, and he can talk a little bit about what suppression repairs are and what our process is going to be this spring. And this is really for those people who were impacted by dozer lines and hand lines.
Yeah, so hello, everybody. My name is Stephen Decatur once again. So fire suppression repairs, those are going to be during the fire. Fire lines were built with bulldozers and with hand crews in order to protect life and property. And during that process, there's a lot of ground disturbance, a lot of movement of the ground to build those fire lines. And so as we head into the spring, once the snow melts, we're going to be going back out and doing repairs on private lands. An attempt was made to contact all those property owners that have fire lines on their properties. If you weren't contacted, I'll throw my email in the chat and you can reach out to me. But we have the list of those fire line repairs that need to be done in the spring. And we're going to be going out with two crews. There's going to be a hand line crew, which is the sheriff's office, and we have a contractor doing the dozer line repairs. So if your property has a dozer line and a hand line on it, you're going to be visited twice by those two separate crews. Likely, it probably won't happen on the same day, but they will be going out and doing those repairs. We're going to try to get it done before the spring runoff. And for this process, what we're going to be doing is returning the soil to where it was and putting the slash back on top of it to try to prevent erosion. We will not be doing any seeding of any kind on those fire lines, but we will be using that flash to help prevent erosion. And that's all I have for those fire line repairs.
All right, great, thank you. Next, I mentioned the risk assessments that we did. Greg had talked about the bear assessments. Those assessments are complete and they are available on INSEWeb, and that website is listed here. You can grab the summary report, which is probably best because it's probably a 200-page report and they can distill it down into a summary, but it really tells you where the highest risk burn areas are. And then also we did our assessment on top of that to ensure that we included private lands, because the bear assessment's really looking at some of those federal land issues. So the two of us together are working to have a complete picture of the fire and determine what can be done. So that risk assessment, like I said, is done. In the next newsletter, I'm going to have details about what that risk assessment shows us. You guys as community members are going to know if your area is one of the higher risk areas. You're also going to have some information about some of the efforts that we're going to try to do this spring to try to keep or to try to minimize the flood risk. We're not going to be able to work in the entire fire area. It's just too big of an area and we don't have enough time. So we are going to really try to focus on the highest risk areas first. We did go out this week with the Natural Resource Conservation Service. We did a bunch of site assessments on both public and private lands to determine what we're seeing out there, what we think is going to happen. We looked at some debris flow modeling, and then we also just looked at where the homes are in association with the roads, where we think the debris might go. The Forest Service was with us, CDOT was with us, the Natural Resource Conservation Service, and then Greeley, the city of Greeley, who has a lot of infrastructure along the watersheds, and both watersheds also did risk assessments this week. So all of this stuff comes together and we've all been working together to get a holistic picture. And now we're at the point where we're developing project areas. So I will say that Larimer County is very focused on stream debris. We're going to try to do a large project with the Natural Resource Conservation Service to remove any debris that could cause a dam downstream, which would then cause additional flood threat to homes and lands. So one, probably our biggest project with the NRCS. We're also doing erosion control projects for both public and private lands. And so in those high risk areas, if we think that a road's going to blow out or a culvert's going to blow out that we own, we can fix that. And then NRCS can help us by armoring some of those culverts. And then also for the private lands, like private roads, and if there's homes in that area, we could do some erosion control to try to protect those. So, but it's going to be in those highest risk areas because we're not going to be able to do everything. So we're putting together a proposal. We meet with the Board of Commissioners on Wednesday of next week to kind of go over what we're thinking. Again, we have to get more hydrology just to make sure that our assessments are correct. And then we'll be ready to go. We already have a contract with NRCS to do some work. So once they know what our project areas are, we'll be able to get working on that. So hopefully that all makes sense to you. There's a lot of information pretty quickly. Disaster declarations. This can be confusing to people because there's a bunch of different kinds of declarations. So I just want you guys to think of this as like a pie. And we need to figure out which pieces of the pie really relate to our disaster. So we applied for 4 different types of declarations, really, or assistance programs. The FEMA Public Assistance Program helps us with public infrastructure. It also helps us with debris. So we did apply for FEMA Public Assistance and we did get approved for that. So our major project for the spring is going to be debris removal on public and private lands, but private lands, we're a little bit limited on that. So I'll talk a little bit about what we're able to do there. We did also apply for the FEMA Individual Assistance Program, which provided funding directly to individuals who had damages and loss. We were denied by FEMA for that. We did work with the state to see if we had a chance for appeal, and we all agreed that an appeal wouldn't go through with FEMA, and we didn't want to delay a Small Business Administration declaration. So we went ahead with that one, put in all of our information. I did call a bunch of people who've been affected by this fire, so thank you for providing information that helped to get this declaration. So just this week, we did get a Small Business Administration declaration. What that does is that provides low interest loans to both families as well as businesses to help them rebuild or help them recover. It also provides some funding for personal items. So if you lost everything within the residence, you can get funding there. Most of these programs, though, they limit secondary homeowners. So it's very hard to find programs that will help rebuild a secondary home. So the Small Business Administration is the same, where it's really those primary residences where they're going to focus. However, if it is a secondary home and you use it as a rental, Small Business Administration can help there. And then finally, the last program was the FEMA Hazard Mitigation Program. We did qualify for the Hazard Mitigation Program, so we can get additional dollars in the coming years for mitigation efforts. So just because we're not focusing on something this summer and this spring, it doesn't mean we're not going to focus on it. It's just we're going to try to get as much done as we can this spring and summer for the highest risk areas to try to limit the flooding, and then get some more additional hazard mitigation funds as we go. So hopefully that all makes sense to you guys. Feel free to ask some questions there. I do want to talk about debris specifically because it's a big deal. There's a lot of folks with a lot of debris on their land. There's also debris that like the hazard trees that can fall across your roadways. And then, as I mentioned, there's that stream debris that can cause dams, which can then cause additional infrastructure impacts or personal property impacts. So we are going to be looking at, again, the stream debris, which I mentioned. There's also a program called the right-of-way debris program through FEMA, which we're going to try to go after as well. What that program allows us to do is we can have some staging areas throughout the fire where we have some dumpsters and we give everybody some instructions on how to use that. And then they can take their debris, their household debris or whatever else to those dumpsters. And then we have a contractor who will loop around and unload those dumpsters at the landfill. That'll save all of you guys the funding of needing to go to landfill and paying those fees. It'll also save you on the transportation because some people won't have the transportation. I'm going to have Carrie talk a little bit about what the long-term recovery group is doing to assist in this effort because we are restricted on actually having our debris contractor go on a private property and remove that household waste. So this right-of-way debris program is a nice partnership there where the county can help a little bit, the individual homeowners can help a little bit, and then also the long-term recovery group volunteers and nonprofits can help a little bit there too. So Carrie, I don't know if you wanted to talk about your stuff now or if you want me to go through the rest of this and then we'll pass it off to you.
Hey, Lori, we do have a couple questions that I think are related to debris. Can we address those first and then go to Carrie?
Sure. One more thing before we do the questions, the hazard tree removal, I will say that I'm really fighting hard to make sure that we can get funding from FEMA to do both public and private roads for hazard tree removal because it's an egress issue and a public safety issue from my perspective as an emergency manager. I want to ensure that we don't have trees block any road in the county that doesn't allow you guys to get out in case we do have evacuations or flooding. So that's the other piece of this that we're really going to be fighting for. So stream debris, the right-of-way debris program, and the hazard tree removal is what I am suggesting to the Board of Commissioners on Wednesday that we go after. And then we also, like I mentioned, are working with the Natural Resource Conservation Service. They have said that streamway debris is absolutely eligible through their program. And then we're working with FEMA on the other two programs. So yeah, we can go to questions.
First question from Nancy is, when will the dumpsters be available?
I don't know. The dumpsters, I know that the long-term recovery group had some dumpsters in the fall and they took those dumpsters back and they were going to be bringing them back out. But now that we're going to have this right-of-way debris program, we have a debris meeting this week where we're going to do that coordination and figure out what those timelines are. So I don't know if Carrie has any timelines yet, but we're going to want to coordinate with our debris contractor to make sure that they're in the area and they can pick up that debris. So more will come on timelines in this next week, and that'll be in that new newsletter as well.
And then we have a question from Susan in the Q&A box, but her hand's also up. So I'm first going to let her talk if she wants to. Let's see, you're unmuted, Susan. I think you can talk.
Yeah, my question is for Lori is there a link we can go to the Larimer County report to determine if what risk level our area is assessed at, if we're in that high risk area or not for flooding and road damage?
Once we get the written report and I give it to the board, we will make that public so everybody can look at the report and see what it says about their specific area.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. And then this isn't necessarily a question, but more of a comment just for your knowledge, Lori. Nancy says that they need a dumpster in the retreat area. I don't know if you guys have plans where those are going to go yet.
Yeah, I've gotten a couple of requests for the retreat. The retreat is another area that we looked at as part of our site assessment too, because that's a debris flow area that we're concerned with. So it is an area that is on our radar. And I definitely have heard from a few people about getting a dumpster up there.
Okay, that's all the questions we have right now. So go forth.
Okay. All right. So we do have, you know, in everything that we do, we partner with our volunteer organizations and nonprofits for a number of reasons. One of those reasons is, as a public entity as the county, there are certain things we cannot do. There are certain things that nonprofits cannot do, but they're different. So by us partnering together, we try to, you know, hit as many boxes as we can to try to get enough recovery resources out there to help people. So I'll have Carrie talk a little bit about what they're working on, and then also I'll have Shale talk about some of her efforts as well.
Yeah, so thank you, Lori. I think you kind of hit on the highlights, but I again want to emphasize what it is that our long-term recovery group partners can do to help you with debris. So we have several agencies who are available to help private homeowners with the debris that is on your private land, especially those areas that the counties, that they're not able to cover. So I saw that you had questions about, you're already working with watershed coalitions, and that you've got people who are doing assessments. And yes, we are coordinating with all of these different groups, wanting to make sure that we are being the most effective and efficient, and that we're also addressing where the greatest risks are, as well as other key areas that we look at for, so for example, we want to make sure that we get the debris cleared off so that somebody can move forward on construction. If we know that that's what's hanging up the whole process, we're going to make sure that that gets addressed quickly so that it doesn't tie up the whole process. So we do have some large community days that we are going to be doing large neighborhoods, focusing on whole entire areas. So, you know, the retreat would be one day of, okay, let's bring out multiple agencies, thousands of volunteers to help clean up this neighborhood on one day. There also will be agencies that are available to do things outside of those one-off things, those big weekend pushes. So I know many of you have already talked with Southern Baptist, with Serve 6.8, with Team Rubicon. Those are all members of the long-term recovery group. We are working with the watershed coalitions. And so if you're already working with someone, just so you know, they are keeping us in the loop about what other things they need to help support your cleanup process. And along with that, if you have not talked with anyone yet about it, we want to make sure that you know we're available. I'll talk about this more later when we talk about long-term recovery processes and all that. But the simplest way, if you have not already talked with somebody about debris removal, the best way to reach us and get connected with us is through our case managers. So they're available to you to help think through debris along with all sorts of other problems that you're now trying to figure out. I'm sorry, I have a lot of background noise right now. Totally lost my train of thought there. In either case, I want to make it clear that there is process, there is coordination, and everything we can. But again, as Lori said, we are prioritizing, all the areas that are looking at debris and flood risk as our first priority. We are hoping to get moving here by the end of March. But, of course, as you all know, March can be kind of a grab bag of weather. And so it's really going to be weather dependent as to how early we're able to get out. And once we are trying to get as much done as quickly as we can before the next storms come in, before those spring rains come in. So I don't know if you all if that answered your question, Sue, or if you have further questions about that part of the process.
All right, I'll go ahead and pass this off to Shale, and then we can answer any questions that folks have. Shale's working closely with the long-term recovery group as well as community members on a few different projects.
Yeah, thank you, Lori. So just to kind of build off of what Carrie already mentioned, there's two kind of really key pieces here in recovery, in that there is the community level human impact, making sure that we're taking care of folks in their property, but also there's this impact of the environment and the long-term effects of all of that. So coordination is truly crucial in all of this, making sure that anything that we are helping with on private property doesn't also have a long-term environmental impact and vice versa. So part of that too is that there's a lot of different partners involved, as Carrie already mentioned, and a lot of the same volunteers might be utilized for each piece of that project. So we just want to make sure that we are being cognizant of that and utilizing volunteers and resources as effectively as we can. So we are definitely all communicating with each other and figuring out those processes in a cohesive way. As far as my area of recovery, I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but communities recover much more quickly when they work together and band together. So that's why we're really trying to encourage like the community-wide cleanup days, or we recognize that every community is very different in how they approach recovery or their individual needs. Glen Haven and the retreat looks very different from Red Feather or Glacier View, and we want to be respectful and honor that and make sure that we are recovering in the way that is best for that community. So my approach to this is making sure that it is community led. So I work with the community members to figure out what their specific needs are, how they want to work together, what the culture is like of that community. And then from there, my job is to provide technical support. So whether that's connection to resources like Carrie at the long-term recovery group or other different partners that make more sense for your needs, or banding together community leaders that want to do different types of events to help move forward in recovery. So whether that's, you want to set up a hub and be a point of contact for sharing information or connecting with your neighbors more further, whatever that might be, my job is to help make that happen. So I try to keep awareness of different types of funding sources or community groups or whatever that looks like that might be able to help move that forward. Another thing I'm doing is really trying to push out information that is pertinent to recovery as often as I can, as well as stuff that kind of really highlights that neighbor to neighbor building. So I also have a newsletter through our Larimer Connects program. The Larimer Connects program was really started as a means to build that grassroots level social connectivity in our Larimer County communities to try and foster that as much as possible before an event. But recovery is also an opportunity for that, because in Larimer County especially, we have local community members that just want to inherently start working together. It's important to work together as a community. We have a collaborative culture here, which is really incredible, and we want to help foster that as much as possible. So I'll be sure to throw the link for my newsletter in the chat, and I send it out every week to 2 weeks, depending on what relevant information is out there. It's not just tailored to the fire. There's also COVID information in there as well. But Lori, is there anything else you wanted me to touch on?
No, I think that's great. I just wanted to make sure people knew that was available to them. So thank you very much. And, like I mentioned, it's really going to take a partnership. It's going to take all of us kind of working that piece of the pie to try to get as much recovered as we can. And part of that is community members too, being a part of this. I do know there's some community members that are older or might have some mobility restrictions. We have heard from some of those folks. So that's really where these volunteer efforts can come in handy, and some other resources for you. So if you can't do like the physical work, there are some folks who can. Again, I have heard there are still restrictions for secondary properties. However, I do know that the long-term recovery group is working with some of their national partners to try to overcome some of that. And these community days is a great way of doing that, because then the community helps each other. And that way we can get a lot of help to those people who have secondary structure damage. So any questions that we have, Michelle?
Sorry, Lori, I couldn't get myself unmuted. No, we don't have any questions right now. We're looking good. No hands raised.
Okay. All right, so I think I'm going to pass it off to Bob and Eric just to give some information about what their offices are doing. We do get a lot of information about taxes, assessments. We get a lot of questions about permitting. So Bob, do you want to start?
Yes, I will. Thank you very much. And again, thank you. Always informative information you guys provide there. And again, I just, for the last 6 months, we've all been working together. And I just think that you guys are doing a great job through and through, and trying to help this community support itself in the recovery. As was earlier indicated from Eric Freed, a good partner in the building department. Both of our offices went out and did the initial damage assessment. Now, as the community begins to recover, the assessor's role here is we are surveying the areas here, and we are the hundreds and hundreds of property owners that have been impacted from this fire will be getting an adjustment to their notice of value statements. They'll be coming out in May. And so the assessor's office is always available to you if you have any questions. I'll put my number in the chat box if you have a question sometime later on this week. We're always available. And I do have an informational video on the assessor's homepage if you need a little reminder about how we do our processes and procedures. It's all guided by state statute. So again, if your structure unfortunately was destroyed due to the fire, you're locked in at that residential assessment rate for up to possibly 5 years, 3 years for sure. If you show intent to rebuild, you get 2 extra years. So there's 5 years for that. So anyways, just know that the assessor's office is here to support and help you recover and answer any questions that you may have. And then I'll turn this over to Eric. Thank you very much.
Lori, could I share my screen? I can show people something that might be useful.
Oh, sure.
Let's see. Okay, so this is the building department website, and if you can see that there's a lot of information there, so I won't have to go over a lot of it. Just remember larimer.org/building, and on that website there's a lot of information about the building codes. There's information about, there's a lot of handouts available. It'll tell you how to rebuild a house, what kind of plans are needed, how to rebuild a pole barn. There's lots of handouts, informational handouts we have here that are helpful to people. You can also look up and see, because you will need a building permit to rebuild almost anything. But you will also need an engineer to help you through that, because the Cameron Peak fire area is basically a high wind and heavy snow area. So you're gonna need to have an engineer to help you work through that. There's information on how to get a building permit. There's information on contractor licensing, which I think people might find useful. You can do the work yourself if you're going to if you're going to be rebuilding, but if you're going to be hiring anyone, they have to be a Larimer County licensed contractor, and that protects you in several ways, because sometimes after a disaster, people show up and say they can help you out. They may not be experienced, they may not be insured, they may not have, they may not be knowledgeable. So you can check and find someone who's a licensed contractor. There's also information we have on the building site that talks about specifically rebuilding. And a lot of that information is also available through the, if you go up here, recovery resources, this will take you to the county's recovery resources page as well. There's a lot of information about rebuilding there. There's a couple of things we do besides the normal consulting with people and helping them rebuild their houses. We do have a program now for a building permit fee reduction. So if you lost a structure in the fire and the structure was permitted or built before permits were required, then you can get a building permit fee reduction of up to $1,000 for the house and up to $500 for an outbuilding. And that it's a pretty simple application to fill out. The other thing we do is if you lost a primary structure, we will fast track your home rebuilding plans examination. So instead of it normally takes us about 6 weeks now because of the volume of work we have, we'll try to get through that in 3 weeks. So we can help you get through the process faster. We can help you figure out what you need to do to rebuild the house. We can help you find a contractor who's licensed, and we're available to help. So you can get hold of us by email, by phone. You can still walk in with our COVID precautions, and just remember larimer.org/building, contact us and we'll help you through the rebuilding part of the process.
All right, thank you. So that's really everybody that we had to speak. I don't know if anybody has any do-overs or any additional information they forgot when they were speaking, if they wanted to say that. Otherwise, we're really open for questions, and we have, about 10 more minutes if there are some questions that anybody still has.
I'll just one more time remind people, I'd like to be a reminder. If you called in and you have a question, don't forget you can hit *9 to raise your hand. I'm not seeing any other questions, and I don't see any hands raised. So we will sit here awkwardly for a few seconds, look at each other, and get a laugh.
I have something. I actually have something.
Oh, Lori's graciously going to fill the awkward silence for us.
Yeah. So I do want to, I did see a question about kind of the coordination, and we talked a little bit about that, but I do want to say that every other week, we have a recovery collaborative that meets on Mondays. And that collaborative is local, state, and federal partners who are all working together on this recovery. So, you know, the U.S. Forest Service is part of that, the Natural Resource Conservation Service is part of that, our state agencies in disaster recovery are part of that, and then our local folks who are involved in the recovery phase are also a part of that, including the long-term recovery group. So everybody has their own meetings throughout the week to kind of do what they're doing, but then twice a month we get together and we do some updates from everybody just to make sure that we all know what each other are doing. And we're really trying to, it's hard, I'm not going to say it's easy, but we are trying to make sure that any kind of projects are coordinated, or any ideas that we have are coordinated, such as if I want to do something in a stream, I'm most likely going to need to have the U.S. Forest Service's permission or a permit. So by them knowing ahead of time, they're going to start working on that, you know, really early for us. And they've already said that they're going to do it. So just so you guys know, there is a lot of coordination. It is a lot of people though, so it's not always easy. But yeah, we're doing the best that we can. We had a lot of lessons learned from the Hyde Park fire, which everybody remembers. And we have some great partners in this area who all really just do great work. So I think that we're going to have some good stuff happen this spring and summer. And we do want to keep those lines of communication open. So if you guys have any concerns or frustrations, just let us know and we'll try to resolve those. That was my filler.
Good,
Lori,
because now we have some questions.
Well, and I do want to just before, because I thought we were going to loop back to me, emphasize the case management process with the long-term recovery group. So this is the way that you find out, how do I apply for funds that were raised? United Way was the largest fund for recovery that was raised in Larimer County. A lot of the different groups that you'd heard about at that point, like Elevations Credit Union, and folks like that, that's where they funneled their money through, was through that United Way Fire Recovery Fund. But we do have others that have stepped forward that have their own funding streams. So Catholic Charities, the Episcopal Church, Serve 6-8, all of these also have their own funds available. The way that you get through that process is going through case management. Rather than having to send out tons of applications to each of these agencies, a case manager works with you. They help identify what resources do you have available. So what insurance do you have available on this property? What's the remaining need that you have? And then they present that case to these different funders. And each of those funders then can say, yeah, that fits the criteria for my fund, and here's how much I can put towards that cause. So it's a great thing because it makes it simpler for you. It also means that those partners, those funding partners, can work together and say, you know what, I can't cover this whole need, but together we can piece together enough to cover it. Wanted to emphasize that for getting access to the funding. However, even if you don't need the money, or you don't want the money, or you have got insurance that's covering it, still you can work with a case manager on tons of other resources available to you in the community. They're going to be, like I said, if you haven't worked with somebody with debris cleanup yet, they're your best first starting point. There's other resources. If there's items that you're looking for that are in-kind donations to replace appliances or things like that you've lost, they've got an inventory and they know where that is being stored right now. And so they can help get you access to that. So there's a lot of different things available through them. If you haven't talked with them yet, I really want to encourage you to reach out. I'm going to post their contact information here again for you.
Thanks, Carrie. It looks like we do have a couple questions and a couple hand raised. I know Lori just answered a question in the Q&A box, typing it out so folks can read that. Sue has a question. Is there any coordination with REA? They left some mess on the property and they say they're going to come in the spring and stack some of the logs, but wondering if the county can encourage them to do so. Thanks again.
Yeah, so as part of that collaborative group that we talked about, we do have an infrastructure work group, and that infrastructure work group's looking at any infrastructure damages or concerns that we have. That includes all of the utility providers. It includes CDOT and our road and bridge folks, our engineering folks, as well as, like I mentioned, City of Greeley and City of Fort Collins have a lot of infrastructure along the Poudre River. So all of those folks are coordinating. So we can definitely pass that along to the infrastructure work group. Stephen, I think, is helping out with that work group. I'm not certain on that, but Cole in our office is, though, so I can make sure that we pass that along to them. And then the question that I answered online is just for you guys. Somebody was asking if those meetings, those collaborative meetings are public, and they're not public because the agencies really want to be able to look at challenges, try to figure out what those solutions are. And that's really where we work back and forth. So when we do decide on something, or when we know we're going to move forward, that will go in those newsletters that we're sending out. But otherwise, I don't think the agencies would feel comfortable kind of bringing up stuff that may or may not happen, or there might be an issue with a permit. It's just really more of a working meeting.
Thanks, Lori, for asking or for answering that. We do have someone with their hand up, Chris Evanson. So Chris, I'm going to give you permissions to talk, and now you just need to unmute yourself and you're good to go.
Okay,
We can hear you.
great. So as a new resident to Larimer County, this is amazingly wonderful information for someone who has no experience with any kind of wildfires or flash flooding or anything like that. So I guess my two questions are, one, if I'd like to get involved some way to help out. I'm retired, so I have time to do that. Maybe give me some information about that, or where can I go? And also any words of wisdom on where I should look to be safe if I go out to go for a hike or something like that.
Great questions, Chris. Lori, I'm going to go to you.
Yeah, Carrie or Shale, do you guys want to talk about, either one of you guys, about how to get connected with volunteer groups or how to get connected into the recovery?
Yeah, I just posted that in the chat as well. So Noco Volunteers is United Way's volunteer website. And that is where we are gathering, collecting all of those individuals who are stepping up and saying, I don't know yet exactly how I want to volunteer. Or you might know exactly what you want to do, but that is where people can get registered. And then as those opportunities come up, we are sending out that information to that group first before it gets posted out to the public. So it's the best first starting point. If you aren't sure if you want to sign up yet, though, it will eventually go, once we go through that first group and say, hey, we've got a couple hours to notify this team of folks that are ready to go, it will then go out to the public, and you can look then at that point too. But that group has postings with all of the different agencies that are doing debris cleanup, case management, other kinds of resource support. So that is the best first starting point for that.
Thank you.
In addition to what, oh, sorry.
Sorry, I just want to let Carrie know she accidentally sent the contact information of the panelists instead of the attendees. So I put it in the attendee box because there was a few folks asking for Carrie's contact information. So that should be in the chat box now.
That's easy to do on here. I noticed that in the last meeting.
Very easy to do, yes.
So in addition to what Carrie just mentioned too, one thing that our group is working on is we're calling it kind of like a brochure of opportunities. So it's going to be kind of like a menu of the different ways that people can get involved in volunteer efforts for recovery. And we're putting that together this week with the intention of getting it out here pretty quickly. So be on the lookout for that, but it will be connected to the resources that Carrie has already mentioned, the Noco Volunteers site and all of that. So be on the lookout for that. It'll be in one of our newsletters, if all of them. So we'll make sure to get that information out to you shortly.
And for your second question, I'm not an expert in hydrology or anything else, but I can tell you though, if you're out and about, you are going to be wanting to look at drainages, just the natural topography or where water is going to start to run. And the thing about these kinds of fires and the floods that follow is whatever you would think would normally come off the land, it's going to be much more than that, and it will be faster than that. And so if you do go out and it starts to rain heavily and you're in a fire area, it would be best to get to safety because we don't know yet we know some stuff from the modeling, but the modeling really, we have to ground truth it at some point. So every rain event, we're going to be working with the National Weather Service to determine, did we see what we thought we were going to see? Are we seeing flooding in areas that we didn't expect? So this whole summer and this spring is all going to be about monitoring every single weather event that we have to determine where our problem spots are. But anytime that you're outside, one, pay attention to what the weather's going to be like. And then two, make sure that you never are in an area where you can't get out of a drainage or a canyon, because those are the areas where it's going to funnel that water into those areas, and that water can get pretty high pretty fast. You're here for the 2013 flood. You look out there now and you just can't imagine that the water could get that high. I was going through the Big Thompson Canyon the other day and I was still just amazed that the water could get as high as it did. But it's because it starts to funnel. So that's the best. I mean, just from being an old hiker and and a backpacker, that would be my only recommendation. I don't know if anybody else has anything.
Yeah, hey, this is Greg with the Weather Service. Just what Lori said. Yeah, you might be better off if you get caught like that. You know, climbing to safety. You're better off wet than dead, kind of thing, rather than going downhill back to your car or something. May be the worst thing to do. So the other thing is the risk that's always there, whether we're in a burn scar or not, is lightning. You know, if you're out there, there's no safe place from lightning outdoors. So you really, if you're out hiking or something, you want to wrap that up by the time the thunderstorms start in the afternoon.
And then on top of all that, we are still in a drought. So I do want to tell you guys that our fire danger is still high. And so this summer, we're going to be kind of looking at everything that's going to be going on. But again, be careful with those fires that you have out there or any open burning, because we're still in a drought scenario. I think, John, did you have your hand up?
Just really quickly, Lori, regarding the 2021 wildfire risks, I wanted folks to be aware that March 13th, which is a Saturday, I have one of my monthly community conversations, and we will have Lori Hodges there, as well as someone from the Sheriff's Office in the Emergency Operations Division to give us an update. You know, it'll be 2 weeks from now or so, so we'll have more information about the prioritization of the county and where we're going to put funding to do debris removal. So I wanted folks to be aware of that. Saturday, March 13th. I put my contact information. You can email me and I can tell you how to get the link for that. Also, March 25th, Red Feather Lakes, Crystal Lakes, we have another community conversation. And I think Shale's going to be at that one from the Office of Emergency Management. And we will have Justin Whitesell, who is the director of our emergency operations within the Sheriff's Office, to talk about 2021 wildfire risks and ongoing Cameron Peak fire recovery efforts. I thought that would be helpful to folks. Laurie, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner and Lori. And I put the link to Commissioner Kafalis's, or actually all three of our commissioners' community meetings. I put a link to the page that has all three of their community meetings coming up. Of course, we'd like to invite everybody to attend those if they want to. And Chris, I hope we didn't scare you. We're glad you're here in Larimer County. And I hope we didn't scare you with all of our warnings from one natural disaster to the next. But thank you so much for your questions.
No, not scared at all. Just very appreciative of all the information. Forewarned is forearmed, and there's nothing wrong with education.
You are the perfect new resident. I will say that.
Thank you.
That you are educating yourself. So thank you so much for doing that.
And to that point, we are going to be doing, because we can't reach every part of the fire this spring and summer, we are going to be doing some education about how private landowners can do erosion control and how they can try to protect their own property along the way as well. So be looking for that. I don't know if we have any other questions. I know that we're out of time, so I want to respect everybody's time, but is there any other questions for anybody or any do-outs that anybody wants to say before we leave?
I'm not seeing any more questions from the public, and I just want to point out to all of our participants, folks, our panelists put a lot of their contact information in the chat box. So I am going to right now save that chat box information. And if you need any of that contact information, please reach out to me if you didn't get it today. You should have gotten my email address when you registered for this event. And I'll be happy to get you in contact with whoever you need to chat to. So thanks for being here.
All right, thank you. Do the commissioners have any last minute? Or are we good? Okay, thank you.
Thanks everyone, have a good day.